The Old Portrait by Hume Nisbet. Old-fashioned frames are a hobby of mine. I am always on the prowl amongst the framers and dealers in curiosities for something quaint and unique in picture frames. I don't care much for what is inside them. For being a painter, it is my fancy to get the frames first and then paint a picture which I think suits their probable history and design. In this way, I get some curious and I think also some original ideas. One day in December, about a week before Christmas, I picked up a fine but dilapidated specimen of wood carving in a shop near Soho. The gilding had been worn nearly away, and 3 of the corners broken off, yet as there was one of the corners still left, I hoped to be able to repair the others from it. As for the canvas inside this frame, it was so smothered with dirt and time stains that I could only distinguish it had been a very badly painted likeness of some sort. But as the frame was all right, I took the spoiled canvas along with it, thinking it might come in handy. For the next few days, my hands were full of work of one kind and another, so that it was only on Christmas Eve that I found myself at liberty to examine my purchase, which had been lying with its face to the wall since I had brought it into my studio. Having nothing to do on this night, and not in the mood to go out, I got my picture and frame from the corner, and laying them upon the table with a sponge, basin of water, and some soap, I began to wash so that I might see them the better. They were in a terrible mess, and I think I used the best part of a packet of soap powder and had to change the water about a dozen times before the pattern began to show up on the frame, and the portrait within it asserted its awful crudeness and intense vulgarity. It was the bloated, piggish visage of a publican, clearly, with a plentiful supply of jewelry displayed. The frame delighted me, and the picture satisfied me that I had not cheated the dealer with my price, and I was looking at the monstrosity as the gaslight beat full upon it, when something about the background attracted my attention. A slight marking underneath the thin coating, as if the portrait had been painted over some other subject. It was not much, certainly, yet enough to make me rush over to my cupboard, where I keep my spirits of turpentine, with which, and a plentiful supply of rags, I began to demolish the publican ruthlessly, in the vague hope that I might find something worth looking at underneath. A slow process that was, as well as a delicate one, so that it was close upon midnight before the vermilion visage disappeared and another picture loomed up before me. Then, giving it the final wash-over, I wiped it dry and set it in a good light on my easel while I filled and lit my pipe and then sat down to look at it. What had I liberated from that vile prison of crude paint? The bust and head of a young woman of uncertain age, merged within a gloom of rich accessories, painted only as a master hand can paint. A face and neck perfectly colorless in their pallid whiteness, with the shadows so artfully managed that they could not be seen. An intent face, with delicate nose, well-shaped although bloodless lips, and eyes like dark caverns without a spark of light in them. The hair loosely about the head and oval cheeks, massive, silky textured, jet black and lusterless, which fell in straight, indefinite waves over the left breast, leaving the right portion of the transparent neck exposed. I noticed that the pallid lips were parted slightly, and showed a glimpse of the upper front teeth, which added to the intent expression of the face. A short upper lip, with the underlip full and sensuous, or rather, if color had been in it, would have been so. It was an eerie-looking face that I had resurrected on this midnight hour of Christmas Eve. In its passive pallidity, it looked as if the blood had been drained from the body, and that I was gazing upon an open-eyed corpse. The frame, also, I noticed for the first time, in its details appeared to have been designed with the intention of carrying out the idea of life in death. What had before looked like scrollwork of flowers and fruit were loathsome snake-like worms twined amongst charnel house bones, a hideous design, in spite of its exquisite workmanship, that made me shudder and wish that I had left the cleaning to be done by daylight. I am not at all of a nervous temperament, and would have laughed had anyone told me that I was afraid, and yet, as I sat here alone with that portrait opposite to me in this solitary studio, I wished that I had spent my evening in a more congenial manner. For in spite of a good fire in the stove and the brilliant gas, that intent face and those haunting eyes were exercising a strange influence upon me. I heard the clocks from the different steeples chime out the last hour of the day, and still I sat spellbound, looking at that weird picture with my neglected pipe in my hand and a strange lassitude creeping over me. It was the eyes which fixed me now with the unfathomable depths and absorbing intensity. They gave out no light, but seemed to draw my soul into them, and with it my life and strength as I lay inert before them, until overpowered, I lost consciousness and dreamt. I thought that the frame was still on the easel with the canvas, but the woman had stepped from them and was approaching me with a floating motion, leaving behind her a vault filled with coffins, some of them shut down, whilst others lay or stood upright and open, showing the grisly contents in their decaying and stained cerements. I could only see her head and shoulders in the inky wealth of hair hanging round. She was with me now, that pallid face touching my face and those cold, bloodless lips glued to mine with a close, lingering kiss, while the soft black hair covered me like a cloud and thrilled me through and through. It made me grow faint, intoxicating me with delight. As I breathed, she seemed to absorb it quickly into herself, giving me back nothing, getting stronger as I was becoming weaker, while the warmth of my contact passed into her and made her palpitate with vitality. And all at once, the horror of approaching death seized upon me, and with a frantic effort, I flung her from me and started up from my chair. Dazed for a moment and uncertain where I was, then consciousness returned, and I looked round wildly. The picture and frame were still on the easel, only the portrait had changed. A hectic flush was on the cheeks, while the eyes glittered with life, and the sensuous lips were red and ripe-looking, with a drop of blood still upon them. In a frenzy of horror, I seized my scraping knife and slashed out the vampire picture. Then, tearing the mutilated fragments out, I crammed them into my stove and watched them frizzle with savage delight. I have that frame still, but I have not yet had courage to paint a suitable subject for it.